And now we are going to discuss about ASEAN official language with the permanent representative for ASEAN, His Excellency Mr. Derry Aman.
And Mr. Aman was appointed permanent representative on October the 25th, 2021. Before this, he headed the Center for Partnership, Facilitation and International Organizations at the Indonesian Transportation Ministry since February 2020.
So good afternoon, Pak Derry. It's good to have you here in the studio.
Good afternoon.
Finally.
Yeah.
So let's just jump onto our first question, Pak Derry. So what is your view on Malaysia's proposal to make Malay an official language of ASEAN?
Well, first of all, we should understand that every country has the right to propose anything on this. So this was stated, as you have said, during the Prime Minister's visit. And the most important thing is that our President Joko Widodo, did not react as if we agree to that.
Mm-hmm.
So politically, we welcome such proposal, but these kind of proposals need some time to be discussed. There needs a lot of processes, and the most important thing in ASEAN, everything has to be based on a consensus.
Right.
So therefore, first, it's every right of ASEAN member states to propose anything. Second, it's any rights of any ASEAN member states to react or to respond to it. And if there is any traction, if there is any understanding, common understanding that we can process to a certain proposal, then there should be a consensus to it. So that's how it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for Malaysia, this is not the first time that they tried to propose during the time of Najib Razak. They also tried to propose for the official language, but now they propose as a second language for ASEAN after English. So what is the significance of having the official language for ASEAN, as we know that the bureaucracy of ASEAN is trying to accommodate all the multicultural nations that are consisted in it?
Yes, first, we should also take into account that ASEAN only recognizes working language. ASEAN does not have an official language. That is what is stated in the ASEAN Charter,
Right.
which is English as the working language. So, of course, there will be possibilities for other language to be regarded as either official language, another working language, or, as the term you said, as a second language. So there is a possibility to that. And everything, again, must be discussed, must be negotiated within the ASEAN mechanism. There should be a consensus. And if by that time Indonesia comes up with a proposal, no, Indonesian, Bahasa Indonesia should be the official language or the second language of ASEAN, then there will be a negotiation to that.
Right.
So once again, as I have mentioned earlier, any ASEAN member states have the right to propose anything. It depends on whether the reaction will be a positive one or something that there will need further negotiation.
Is there any criteria, though, for some language, a language other than English that we're using right now as a working language in ASEAN to be one of the official language or the working language or the second language of ASEAN?
Right. In ASEAN, the first basic reference that we need to see is the charter. It doesn't say anything about characteristic, the requirements for any language to be put as an official language or working language or second language. English as a working language, of course, it goes back to 1967 when the Bangkok Declaration was signed. Everyone at that time, of course, as an international recognized language, English was used. And therefore, when we come up with the charter in 2007, we put English as a working language because at that point of time, there was no other challenges or proposals whether there should be a second language or an official language.
Right.
If an official language is chosen, what kind of weight would it carry? Does all member states need to learn it? So does every meeting need an interpreter in that language? What kind of weight would it carry?
Well, assuming there will be an official or working language, second language later on, ideally, people within the ASEAN members will need to learn, because working language, official language for ASEAN is important, where it transforms its position, it projects its position to the world globally within the ASEAN member states also. So it would be natural if there is another language, let's say Bahasa Indonesia. Bahasa Indonesia should be learned by all of the members of the ASEAN community.
Well, I mean, it would be nice as us as Indonesians to have it as the second language or maybe official language of ASEAN, and the headquarters of ASEAN is here in Jakarta.
Right.
So, you know, it's like a privilege as well. So what do you think? Do you believe that this Bahasa Indonesia is the next language for ASEAN? You think so?
Well, personally, don't take it as an official position, because we don't have such official position yet. But personally, logically, Bahasa Indonesia is being spoken widely, I think 11th in the world. And demographically, within the ASEAN archipelago, it's the most
Yeah, we are the biggest.
widespread bahasa language spoken in ASEAN. So logically, it meets such requirements or pre-requirements. But again, it depends on how 10 ASEAN member states would view it.
We perhaps need to lobby them.
Well, Pa, if assuming that Bahasa Indonesia is chosen as the official language of ASEAN, what kind of impact would it have towards the organization? So you need to change administrative, like papers, documents. Is it going to be a lot of work, or is it even possible?
It is going to be a lot of work. First of all, I would say working language would still be English. Another language, let's say Bahasa Indonesia, can be put as an official language or a second language. Then, in documents, in a document of a meeting, you will need two kind of sets of documents, Bahasa Indonesia, English. In terms of translation, simultaneous translation from Indonesia to English, from English to Indonesia, those kind of things. So it would be a lot of groundworks that would be needed to fulfill this.
But you see that the official language of ASEAN can change in the future. Do you think, you know, as you mentioned before, perhaps English will still be the working language, because it's the first language in 1967 when it was the Bangkok Declaration said it first. So what do you think?
There is always a possibility. And I think with 10 ASEAN member states, we are also projecting that there will be 11 in the future. So 11 members from 10, and then the language from a working to an official, it's always possible and open. But again, ASEAN famously has its own way, the ASEAN way, the ASEAN consensus, no domestic interference, those kind of things. So it's a very dynamic and fluid thing. But I would say anything would be possible in the near future to discuss it further.
Yeah, I mean, it would be very nice. But I mean, you as an Indonesian ambassador for ASEAN, you think you're going to work this for Indonesian language to be, you know, officially one day in ASEAN? Or do you think, or have you done, Indonesia, has it done anything, any effort to make our language as the official language of ASEAN?
Well, in terms of an official position, I don't think that Indonesia has its position as such yet. But in terms of promoting Bahasa Indonesia, of course, we are doing it. Not only within our diplomacy, but also in other terms, tourism, people-to-people links and connections. Bahasa Indonesia is being promoted. But as an official position that we want Bahasa Indonesia to be the official ASEAN language, I would have to say that right now we don't have that official position yet. And again, myself as an ambassador to ASEAN, I have my instructions from Capital, which is the President and the Minister for Foreign Affairs. So I abide to any instructions that I get on this specific issue.
Pak Derry, but I'm curious, as a representative or our ambassador to ASEAN, are there any other lingua franca other than English that is being used in the organization currently?
In ASEAN, no. It's only English as a working language. But of course, informally, Bahasa Indonesia is being understood by our colleagues from Brunei, from Malaysia, from Singapore, and between our colleagues from Thailand and Laos, they understand each other. There are some words from the Khmer Cambodian which is being used in Thailand and Laos. So it's unique. The ASEAN languages that we are experiencing right now is quite unique.
Well, I mean, we know that Indonesian language and the Malay language, Malaysian language, they probably come from the same root, but albeit they're different. So what are your opinions on this?
Yeah, they are different. And again, in terms of the widely spoken or used, of course, Bahasa Indonesia is in a more majority position. So, but these similarities is a strategic value in terms of our culture, ASEAN identity, whereas we are different nations, we are different countries, but we have these kind of historic roots which are the same. So it's more or less how we form or foster the ASEAN community, which we have achieved in 2015, and beyond, how we would see this ASEAN community, which still has its sovereignty, borders, territory within its member states, but towards the outside world, we want to position ourselves as one community.
Yeah, this is just out of my curiosity. We see Malaysia did it twice. Don't you think that this is like a trigger for Indonesia as well to do the same thing? I mean, they have shown somehow being nationalistic, to put their language as ASEAN official language. Well, they try. What about Indonesia?
Right. I think Malaysia being quite aggressive in trying to promote the Bahasa Melayu as more of an international language outside the Malay region. And Indonesia, we always position ourselves as a country that in ASEAN, we have this history of trying to be the leader, trying to lead or to forge things towards certain directions. Therefore, we are more prudent in promoting our statements, because we may fear that once we state something, it will be regarded as something official. So therefore, maybe the approach that Indonesia is taking is more prudent, more to a certain way, more tactical and strategic.
Wow, it's interesting. So it doesn't have to be that aggressive, but as prudent as Indonesia, it means the same as well.
Well, Indonesia can be aggressive on certain issues where we find that we need to be aggressive.
Yeah.
But there are other issues that we think that we should be more strategic in handling it, and we should position ourselves in a more of which suits Indonesia as Indonesia it is.
Well, thank you so much, Pak Derry Aman, for your insights and for your time as well to talk to us on the 3 Hour News Show. It's good to have you in the studio finally. And take care, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome.